Thank you, Pat. What a pleasure it is to be back. I was here last week. I had the opportunity to speak in the forum on Monday. How fascinating was that? Who was all there at the forum? Were you at the forum? Did you have a good time?
Oh, yeah.
It was fun. It was fun. What a great time it was. I want to introduce you to some people that are here with me. First of all, my bride, Kim. Kim, stand up here. Everybody can see how beautiful you are tonight. Turn around. Turn around. Everybody say, no, turn around.
What are you doing with him?
Hey, man, I'm married over my head. I'm not in denial. It's okay. And of course, my guy Gordon here, works on our web and takes pictures and whatnot. And then we got Ray and Keith, who Ray, he's been out beating the bushes with me. We have been calling on a lot of homes. And we have it down to kind of a science where we have the list that we go and we call on, and Ray drives, and I'm running back and forth to the houses, and it's to those special homes. It's not every single one, but we kind of look at and have those who or target those homes or people we know are going to vote in the primary. And there are some of you who are here tonight, I know that I called on. Back over here. Go ahead and raise your hands. Okay, go ahead. There you go. Right here, right over here.
Yay.
And then over here. We invited them to this tonight. And it was great fun. But yesterday we called on Saturday, roughly 30 homes over in this area in our sign. I'm still waiting on Luke for the signs. They'll be here shortly this week. And just over in this area over here, we were able to get commitments to let us put out, of the 30 homes we called on, 16 signs.
Outstanding.
So we have some conservative folks over here, as I'm sure that you know, in this area. That was very exciting. And then I got my campaign manager here. This is fascinating. Right here, Ron Stern. Ron Stern, stand up so everybody can see who you are. Ron and I met years ago when I was at Lexus. I sold him a car. And we were done with the car sale, and I didn't find out really anything about him in terms of what he did or anything until the very end. As he was leaving, he was getting in the car, driveway, he and his wife were there, and he handed me this business card. Now this is back in 1999. He hands me his business card, and it says, Ron Stern, FBI Special Agent.
Oh.
And I thought, he goes, if you ever need anything, give me a call. His wife hands me her card. His wife hands me her card, Julie Stern, federal prosecutor. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, who are these people?
Did you rethink your card?
Yeah. So it turned out we went to the same church and had the opportunity to baptize their son. And then when we started our Bible study in the summer of 2012, I saw Julie at the dealership, and I said, hey, we're starting this. Why don't you guys come on out? So Ron came out, and Julie came out, and they became a part of what we're doing. What's really interesting is Steve Toth and I were talking to Ron about possibly being my campaign manager. He goes, I don't know if you really want me. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that maybe wouldn't be happy and who know me. And I said, well, what's the problem? He said, well, my specialty was I was FBI Special Agent in charge of, are you ready for this? Political corruption. This gentleman right here tackled Marion Barry. Wow. You know about that? And there are some people here in Houston, very, very exciting times for those people, I'm sure. But Steve Toth said, Ron, man, we just don't want you. We're going to put you on the hood of our car as an emblem on the front for everybody to see. So God has a sense of humor. I could have never thought, even orchestrated something like that. So to have a great team and others as well that are just doing an awesome job. Keith is the one that's putting together all the lists. He's putting together all our walking lists and our dialing for dollars lists and the whole deal. And Catherine's back here helping us. She goes with us. It's very exciting. So, but what I wanted to do, I had the wonderful opportunity this week to spend some time in Austin. Before this deal all goes over, I really want to go back and again, and I went to the Texas Public Policy Commission. And for those of you who don't know, that is a conservative, if you will, think tank, as they like to call themselves. But they are. These people are pretty sharp. And we went through so many topics. It's like they took off the top of my head and poured this information in. And then when I left, we had gone through probably 12 to 15 topics and discussed a number of issues, all the way from taxes to social issues having to do with what is taking place in the traditional family, against traditional family over in San Antonio, gun control, immigration, all these various things. But there were some things that stood out to me that I thought were fascinating, that some of you may know, but I know that not all of you know, that I just want to share a couple things with you. That first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the budget for the state. I want to talk a little bit about taxes for the state. We've had a little bit of that. And then to talk about education, because I think there's some opportunity in education that is very, very exciting. And whether or not we can do it when we get there is another issue, but we will certainly make every effort to do it. But as we think about the budget, here's Talmadge Heflin and James Quintero were the ones who spoke. And the question was asked, how is it that at the end of the biennium in 2011, we were short of money, but somehow they put together a budget where there was no tax increase. And then we go to the end of the 13 budget, and the taxes and the amount of budget that goes into the general fund has increased by $20 million. I sat there when I heard that, someone told me that can't be for real. But then this is exactly what they went over. It was an increase of 24%, the highest single increase in the state, in the country ever. As a matter of fact, we were referred to here as the same as Sacramento, and the Wall Street Journal said that they'd not ever seen anything like it. But here's how it happened. They start out the year, 2011 biennium, and they short the budget. $4.5 billion in Medicaid and $1.9 billion in education. In other words, they just pull that out and they kind of dial it down so it doesn't show as an expense, and it shows that they're staying inside this idea of population growth plus inflation, which is how they judge how we're going to let the government and how taxes grow. And they received accolades for it. It was a tight budget, they said, and people were praising them for it. Well, what they ended up doing was they really defrayed Medicaid, a chunk of money for Medicaid, as well as a chunk of money for education. Have you all heard this before?
Yeah.
So here's what happened. They come into the 2013 after these accolades, and so they still have a payment for Medicaid and for public education that's left over. Now they have a term for that. That's called backfill, right? So they start off, and they're trying to start the budget in the hole kind of like this. So they have to make up for the last year's budget, and they take that amount of money. It's a little over about $6.2 to $6.4 billion. Well, now they know they're going to have that the following year, so now they have another $6.4 billion added on. So now we're up to almost $13 billion. Then they have an increase over this period of time and a lot of influx of taxes, where now we have a surplus of really about $8 billion. Now the surplus of the $8 billion, they decide there's a number of places they're going to put it, but we know it's not going to be to roads and bridges. And it's not going to be transportation. It's not going to go to water, but they have it. The unbelievable thing to me is I have read financial statements for many years. I'm sitting there, and I've looked at budgets, I'm sitting there, and I'm saying, hey, wait a second. How are we accounting for this? Do you know what they did? They raised the budget. And they just slid it in so that they just added it on. The 6.4, the additional 6.4, and then the extra, and they come out and they did say, well, we really did it according to population growth plus inflation, the way we're supposed to do. And the fact of the matter is, and if you got really down to it, they did. If you pull out that stuff again, if you're measuring percentages, but if you look at the big picture, that represents a 24% increase in the budget in one biennium. How many of you, raise your hand, do you think that that is sustainable? How many of you believe that that is a fair way to keep track of the money? To slide it in, to hold it out so it's balanced, knowing that you're going to have to bring it back in, You know you're going to have that same expense, so you add the two together, but we have this windfall of money coming in, and so we do what government does. What do? Since we have a windfall of money, let's don't give it back to the constituents. Let's figure out a way to spend it. Now you understand that when we figure out a way to spend it, what we do is we add things. If you're around this area, we add parks, we add dog parks, we add boats, we add boathouses, we add transportation corridors between the front of the Woodlands and Lake Woodlands. No joke. We call that a transportation corridor. It's amazing. So what we do is we take these extra funds, we create stuff, but guess what? 6 boats need to have somebody manage those 6 boats. And we have to, of course, have almost $1 million boathouse in order to keep them. So it takes somebody to manage that. And then we have to have somebody to maintain the boats. And then we're going to spend $40,000 a month maintaining them, or something like that, as I've been told, in that area. This is how we grow government. We have an influx of money. We have a windfall of money, and without our permission, there are a group of people who decide this is going to be our 5-year plan, and then we're going to take this plan and we're going to put it out to 2035. And how many of you had any choice in the 5-year plan in the Woodlands? Raise your hand. Anyone? Just one? So when we talk about conservatives, and we talk about conservatives being in a place of business for a long period of time, and we see an increase. I've got to show this to you. Can I show this to you? I've got to show this to you. I left it back here. We have a sales tax revenue for the state of Texas of 13.99, Oak Ridge North of 13.0, Shenandoah of 12.3. And did you know that from 2008-2012, the Woodlands Township has a 49.3 increase in sales tax?
Yeah, that's ungodly.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to get a little chunk of that, and what are we going to do? We're going to build more government. And at the same time, our homes are appreciating. And I talked to a gentleman as I was calling on houses yesterday. And I told him, I said, you know, our taxes, although our rate goes down, our taxes continue to go up. And he said to me, he said, but our homes are appreciating. Isn't that a good thing? I said, may I ask you a question? He said, yes. Does your appreciation in your home pay for your children's college? Does your appreciation in your home pay for that work that you need to have done on your car? Or that car that you need to buy for your son? So this idea that our homes are appreciating, okay, that only works if you're selling and moving. If you're going to stay here, who cares? What I want is a little bit of that money back to me. And then somebody will say, well, let's go ahead and take those monies, since it's pre-inflation dollars, and since we have a 5-year plan, an X plan, and let's just spend the money ahead of time, because the dollars are there's going to be inflation, and let's just do it today. And I sit there and I go, hey, wait a second. I want some of those pre-inflation dollars. I want to do something to my home. I want to put something in my backyard. I mean, I don't use your dog parks. Please let me do it for my doggies in my backyard and give me some of my money back. Tell me, how do you all feel about that? That should infuriate you. But that's really what's going on. You know this is really what's going on. I think, and transparency is a huge issue in it. And the fact of the matter is we have very little to say about any of these things. And there are a number of things that we can do. One of the things is we've got to look at every budget, every single area to budget. Another thing is we have to start with baseline budgeting. That means Last year we spent $10,000 in this category, so this year we're going to start with $10,000 plus anything we add to it. This is how you grow a budget. Baseline budgeting says, no, we're going to start back this year at 0 and let's see how much we need. Doesn't that make sense? Let me ask you a question. Isn't that how you do your budget? Absolutely. We can reduce the state sales taxes coming in. There's all kinds of ways. There is an influx of people that is unprecedented right now. It is absolutely awesome. And this is the time when instead of building more infrastructure and making government bigger and adding more stuff, like the scenario we talked about in the Woodlands, as we build this building and that building and add this section and all the rest out of tax dollars, and then at the same time, what's going on right now, right here on the front page, county faces difficulty getting bonds passed. Imagine, see, to do this work that we have money to do, but we're not spending it on that. That's what's going on with the state. So let me ask you a question. If that's what's going on right here for the last 10 years, why would we send somebody to Austin who is part of that whole process, that whole big picture, and have them go and do what Austin's doing? People, I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you. Give me a shot at this deal. I'm asking you to vote for me. Send me over there and let me stand up in the legislature and share a few things about how we here in the Woodlands and Conroe and surrounding area think about this. Want to talk about taxes? Let's talk about just a little bit about taxes. You know, it's really amazing. It's the stuff that comes out. I learned, and did you know, that in 1978, 84% of the voters in Texas approved, 1978, it's a long time ago, the Texas Tax Relief Act. Do you remember that? Any political types? Listen to this. And it's an amendment to the Texas Constitution, if you will, that puts tax and expenditure limits. They call it TEL. TEL is an acronym for anything. I've flip cards with acronyms of this means this, and this means this, this means this, since I've been starting this. Now it's interesting, from 1990 to 2012, did you know that state spending has grown 310%? 310%. Basically based on the increase in people's income. So that as Texas made more and more money, the taxes went up. Of course, we believe it should be sum of population growth plus inflation. If it would have been the sum of population growth plus inflation, the percentage wouldn't have been 310%. The growth would have been 132%. We'd have all had more money in our pockets to keep. Now, here's the problem. This TEL, this tax and expenditure limit, this deal, only applies to certain revenues, and what all those are, it just applies to a certain section. But there's another whole section that it does not apply to. These tax and expenditure limits don't apply to certain federal funds, fees, and fines, and the result of that is they can grow that section. They can spend that and they don't have to pay attention to that, to the population growth plus inflation, so they can spend whatever they want. And because there isn't any real stopping or any hindrance in the legislature calling emergency meetings and saying, hey, we need this money, and all it takes is a simple majority, boom, they decide to spend the money and the money is spent by a simple majority vote, if you will. So when you think about that, I think there's a few things that need to be done. One of those is that the TEL, the tax expenditure limit, needs to apply to all revenues. We need to come up with it so that we just can't call an emergency meeting. There needs to be a super meeting of a super majority before any extra taxes are spent or taken in order to grow it as well. These are some things I think that can be done. However, if we believe in big government, and it seems like it's helping our appreciation of our houses, okay? Let's grow the government bigger so we can appreciate our house. And boy, we say, man, this is a great place to live, man. I'll tell you what, it's like a second job. And it increases our net worth. How many of you can spend your net worth? People, listen, we need to get a grip on this. We want some of this money back, either lowering it or give it back. I'm not sure how to go about doing that. The point is this, and where we're at in the influx of people coming in to this state and the unprecedented amount of people coming in. I've always been a member of the Woodlands Chamber of Commerce through my businesses, but I've never personally been a member. I recently became a member, both our church and separately from that, both our campaign. And I sat there and I looked what Anadarko was going to do. And I saw the picture of the very building that we were in the Chamber of Commerce, which is a beautiful building, is fixing to be gone. Do y'all know that? That's all part of this whole process of this infrastructure growing. Every time I drive by Exxon, I see 14 to 16 cranes. And I'm thinking, man, that is awesome. Man, it increases the value of my home. But I dropped your tax rate. Wait a second. And I had my wife check it. I said, Kim, this can't be right. As I'm talking about this, I said, man, I got to make sure I'm right about this. And so I had her go look. We looked up the last 5 years of taxes. It just keeps going up. My house value is going up, so they dropped the rate. And I went ahead and, as I said, I think I mentioned the meeting the other day, the night before the debate, I went back and I really looked hard at the summaries of the budgets of back to 2010 of the Woodlands Township. I looked at those things. I was up till 4 o'clock in the morning. The next night I had to do this deal. And I sat there and I kept looking. It's just what I do. It's really not that big a deal. And so I'm looking at this and I'm seeing, I was amazed. It really is. The tax rate did go down. This last year for 14 they voted 0.32 to down to 0.29 per 100. My house continues to go up. It's going to cost me more money, and they drop the rate. Either we drop the rate a little bit more. There's a way to fix this. But the answer is not to create a windfall of money sitting in funds so that arbitrarily those who are in charge can just arbitrarily take those monies and spend them wherever they want to spend it. Don't you agree? I mean, doesn't that bother y'all? And listen, nobody is about micromanaging people who are in charge. But you see a number of things that take place, and you go, wait a second, who voted for that? No one. Who decided to? Those people. Really? Those are the people you want to send to Austin? But they've got so much experience. People, I am not so much a fool to believe that I don't have necessarily the name recognition as those who are running in many of these areas of the office right now. But I do know this, it's not rocket science. I run 6 businesses under the same roof. Every single one of them, especially when I was with Ford, had to be profitable. I could not lose in one of those businesses or my company would lose money. I've managed millions of dollars worth of inventory. I've managed millions of dollars in contracts and transits. I understand the concept, please believe me, of float. I've been doing it for years. And you know what? It's got to all come out to zero at the end of the day. And you know what? Every time I look at something with Texas or the county or something, it never comes out to zero. We're always going deeper. Things are growing more. And we're keeping less. Doesn't that bother you? That makes me crazy. So I want to go to Austin and be crazy on your behalf. Let's talk about education just for a moment. I was introduced to a fascinating concept this week in higher education. And of course, this think tank, they've got these guys there that are absolutely awesome. And they said, and I in my first glance, I thought, really, is that really true? And in 1970, there were 2.5 teachers for every non-teacher in Texas. So you have these 2.5 teachers out here doing what teachers do. They're teaching students, and students are doing, at that point, we're doing pretty doggone well here in this state, right? Got 2.5 teachers for every 1 administrator. I'm not sure how this can happen. Maybe the administration is getting older and they just see the need to have more stuff put in their direction so that they can move in the retirement domain, kind of like all these guys in the Congress and Senate who are exempt from these various things that we have to pay but they don't have to pay, including insider information on stocks and some other things. They get to do it, but we don't. And so we have this retirement coming, or whatever the case may be and why this could take place. And today the ratio is 1 to 1. Used to be 2.5 to 1. Now it's 1 to 1. For every teacher, there is a non-teacher involved at some level. May I ask you a question? What do you think that does to the need for funding? It's really fascinating. Here's something else. Hold on just a second. When you think about this, at the Institute, at the foundation, they said, and one of the ways to fix education was to change this ratio on higher education. It's higher education. But not only change this ratio, but make the teachers teach more classes. Make them teach more classes. And I was looking, I was scrambling, I was looking for the numbers tonight, I couldn't find it, but there are numbers, I'll bring them next time. That there used to be something like an average teacher taught 4 or 5 classes, okay? And now it's like switched to 2.5 or 2.34 or something like that. Well, what does that do? If you're going to have the same amount of classes presented, what do you have to do? You got to have certainly more teachers, which means, of course, we've got to have more administration. So that your average education comes out to be $140,000, $150,000. Governor Perry comes up with an idea. People think he's crazy. He says, I'm going to challenge us to come up with a 4-year education for $10,000. People laughed. They thought he was a fool. How can this be? And they said, man, what can you get for $10,000? And the answer was, look what we're getting for $150,000. I'm serious. That was the answer. He put that out there. Did you know Texas A&M produced a curriculum where a student now can get a 4-year education for $10,000? And it's mostly online.
Right.
So he's put the challenge out. One of the things that they challenge us to do as legislators this year, and I think it's only on 15, maybe it's either 5 or 15%, but it's on a small percentage of the total degrees that would apply to. And so I think it's 5%. And so what the legislators said was, man, why don't we just put that into our process and let's just say, look, we want to see 5% of these. Now there is another school, it's not here in Texas, I want to say it's either Louisiana or Georgia or something like that, that caught on to this, or Florida. And they've produced an education, are you ready for this? 4-year education for $7,500.
In what?
Don't know. Engineering. Oh, mainline classes. Mainline classes.
Engineering?
Yes, that was part of it. That's A&M. That was the whole deal. Fascinating. And the guy who was pushing this was saying, look, this is going to get people's attention. Have you all heard of this before? It's happened. It's happened. We were shocked. We sat there and said, you've got to be kidding me. I have been, because I have some education in my background, I have scrutinized a little bit online education. I mean, it's kind of like the honor system and that sort of thing, but not necessarily. There is a way to do this. What I think is exciting is at least the opportunities out there, and it's at least causing us to think. Now, when you think about lower education, when you think about kindergarten through 12, and there are a number of different views on this, I'm a proponent of, I'm assuming most of you are a proponent of school choice. I said this in our vetting, I believe it. I believe that if a person wants to send their child to a private school, they ought to be able to get a tax credit for it. Who has opposed this? The House, which is Republican, They opposed it. Do you know why? There were a number of Democrats that opposed it, but it's rural Republicans that oppose it because they're afraid that they're going to lose students. What's the answer to fear of loss? Free markets. Think about that. If they don't want to lose what they have in the public school, those who are in charge and the administrators or whatever the case may be, it only stands to reason that if we have an opportunity for students to go somewhere else, what is going to happen to these people over here? What will they do? Tell me, what will they do? They're going to figure out a way to improve if they want to keep their jobs. Doesn't that just make sense? Isn't that how we do it in business? Why can't we do that in education? I know it's unheard of. I know that it's a crapshoot to even think you'd even get a bill like that out. But the fact of the matter is, it is true. Because education in the state of Texas, across the country, we don't want to get rid of our public schools. Why? Same reason we don't want to cut down our prisons and move to a different type of prison system. You know what the answer is? Because these are job generators. But we don't want to lose jobs. When you and I both know, as proponents of free enterprise and free markets, that when you turn the market loose and you get creative minds to be thinking about how they can do this, all of a sudden you have a decreased cost and you have an increased quality. And that's the nature of what we do. And it can happen in public education. But if we keep giving these people these stipends that are automatic and we keep operating on, we got $100,000 or $3 billion here for education, and that $3 billion, now let's add to that rather than going back to zero, what do we really need? This is what takes place. We could go on and on. It's very exciting, people, the opportunity that we have here in Texas. It's very, very exciting. I want to encourage you. I know you're all involved because you're here tonight. Would you please do me this favor? Please do this for me. Send me to Austin. And I promise you, I will do you proud. We'll get some of this stuff right. Questions?
Okay.
Do we have time for
Yes.
some? I don't know that I have the answer, but I'll try.
Okay, well, on education, you know, we've got unfunded mandates from the federal government.
Right.
And I understand what the rural districts did because I asked about that. I was for tech. Now, how would that apply if you have to educate, let's say in the legal, you can't ask questions, Medicaid, same thing, if they're born in a hospital. If you go to a tax credit situation, what happens to those students that right now you can't ask a question, they just come into school and you educate them?
They go back to where they came from.
Okay, so maybe
Now, they're not going to go back to where they came from, and I'm not trying to be,
Oh, no,
I'm
no,
not
no.
trying to
I
speak
agree.
ill of this, but
I
the fact of
agree.
the matter is
Yeah.
that, go ahead.
Well, what I'm saying is maybe that's part of the resistance. It's also because a lot of these districts have teachers that are teaching a lot of students in those public schools. They're hiring more teachers, they're going to having facilities that, you know, C-SPAN was part of these large administrative facilities,
Sure.
but they, you know.
But
they've got a lot of
here's my
students.
question, and this is, I think, is a fair question. Why should I, as a taxpayer,
Right.
who work hard, live here, and provide for my family, my kids, involved in my church and all the rest, why should I pay for somebody who shouldn't be here to begin with?
Right, I agree.
And so then we say, well, we have to keep this going, so we can't give tax credits because we got to keep those tax credits coming. You know, as long as the government is committed to keeping those tax credits coming, that money's going to come from somewhere. I mean, how do you explain 50% of all babies born in the state of Texas, 58% last year, and 56% in 2007? How do you explain that all being born in Medicaid for free? Who paid for that? It wasn't free. You and I paid for it. And this year, we're facing this year anywhere from 10 to 13 billion in increase right now as we go into this next year in Medicaid. People, this is unsustainable. And I'm going to tell you, there's a whole group of people that want to turn us from red to blue. And if we're not serious about getting out the vote, and we're not serious about standing up to this stuff, and I want to tell you what else. What I have seen and what I am experiencing as I deal with legislators and as I go to Austin and as I see various things, you can reason with the liberal mind, you think, but there's a whole different mindset there. What grieves me is the Republicans in name only, who are there and who are just kind of middle of the road and who just don't want to rock any boats. They say, well, anything that's controversial, let's stay away from it. People, it's the controversial stuff that are the issues. Anybody can do the easy stuff. Agreed?
I just had one more thing, because it's really bothered me after I researched and looked into why things
Yeah.
were not done in that
Yeah.
regard. But you know, the head of HEB, who was a good friend of Bill Clinton, and, you know, Perry Holmes and many other huge conglomerates are more than happy to have the taxpayer pick up and get cheap labor. I mean, they lobbied against the rescinding of the Sanctuary City Act that was
Right.
trying to get passed. So you've got corporate, who should be our friends, you would think, you know, business people. And these big businesses,
There's only one thing that can beat that. There's only one and one thing only. That is the vote of conservative legislators. That means if we don't put conservative people in who have some backbone, who won't just go with the flow and roll over and play dead every time they get into a deal, well, we'll do this if you do this. Wait a second, I didn't come here to negotiate on this. That's what we have to have. And I understand that there are those who will say, no, Mark, we all have to get along together. Oh, really? I'm all about peace. If you come to my church on Sunday, I promise you, I will teach you principles from the Scripture on how to get along with people. But you know, even the Bible teaches that you got to know when to plant your flag and fight and when to pick it up and run. The Bible teaches that. There's some times when you got to stand for the truth. And you'll end up paying the price for standing for what's right. You know, I apologize to you all for this story. At the end of every year in the car business, historically, they would tax the dealer. It's kind of a franchise kind of a tax. And the dealer was required to report how many cars they had in inventory, and they had to pay X amount of money. And for some dealers, depending upon the year, it meant the difference of whether there was profit or no profit. And so what they would do is they would have these huge ads at the end of the year. Do you remember? Pass the savings on to you. We're going to get taxed on all this. Remember that? Remember this? Man, we had some awesome year-end sales. It's incredible. What was really amazing, some dealers had such big inventories at the end of the year, they would drive their vehicles off the property and hide them, because they would come over and take pictures of the inventory and count the cars from a helicopter. It's the only way they could do it, or one of the ways that they could do it. So the Texas Automotive Dealers Association said, hey, work with us. Let's pass that tax on to the consumer. If we do that, will you promise not to use that as an advertising technique at the end of the year? Yes. And they did. Every time you buy a new vehicle, there's a tax, and it's called an ad valorem tax. And what you do is after you go to do your deal and it's all done, and they're going to give you all the TT, and now you say, now how much is that ad valorem tax? Because they got to charge them. And you find out it's $136 or whatever, say, fine, take that off the selling price or I'm not going to buy the car. It's just another tax that a strong lobby group got together and passed it on to the consumer. Why are you taxing me on stuff that's on the ground? I haven't even sold it. You're taxing me for being in business. Doesn't that bother you?
Sure.
Absolutely. How about taxing productivity? Let me sell it and then tax me, and then that's the end of it. That's not how it works. So we want to end that. And we'll work hard to do it.
Now, I've heard, of course, about the 300% increase in administrative costs in education. But I haven't really heard anybody say what they feel could be cut in the state budget for education. Have you determined that yet?
But it really, I think it depends on what you're looking at, and without looking at it, I can't tell you. But I know this, it can be. Because if you just look at the student-teacher, the student, non-student, the teacher, non-teacher ratio, it's so high that much of it has to come at the level of what are these people doing, how many classes are they teaching. We're paying these people to teach 2 classes when they used to teach 4.5 to 5.
Well, that's professors in college, right?
But even so, but that's all part of it, whether it's professors in
But if
college
you do-
or whether it's down at the lower level.
If you do, you'll have to require, like the county or the ISDs, use it, you know, that they have to cut their administrative costs. So they're gonna start screaming, oh, we're gonna have to fire teachers before they lay off any administrative staff.
Isn't that how big government is? Isn't that how
Yeah.
bureaucracy is?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that if we insist that it moves in, shifting the resources over to the teachers, that's ideally the case. But again, I wish I had some specific numbers, but I'm telling you, I know there are. And I've got my little book back there that has them if you want to come see me.
Sure.
I just want to throw out a fun fact to help you. Montgomery County actually has a high school football coach that makes 6 figures a year and doesn't teach a single class. And so it's things like that that's wasting our education dollars when football became more important than education of our children.
And you know, and you hate to sit there and be a fuddy-dud and say, man, let's end the athletic program. So I'm going to tell you right now, that will not happen.
No, I'm not talking about ending the programs, but I'm definitely not talking about paying someone $100,000. Because my coaches, when I was in school, taught class.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with that? Why not
Same
have
here.
to be a history or civics teacher?
They should
and
have
then
to
coach
do
after school?
I'm with you. Yeah.
Staying on education, what do you see as the biggest problem with Seago?
The biggest problem with Seago is transparency. Now, they've solved a little bit of that problem, but here's the deal. There is a disconnect between the textbook and what the online learning and preparation of the teacher is in the lesson plan. Which, by the way, the online program is done by Microsoft. And there's a lobby group and an interest in all of that, but that's a whole other deal. But there is, as a matter of fact, it was Glenn Beck and David Barton who looked at Seago. And what they discovered was that parents did not know, and it was not being presented in the teacher plan what they believed was represented in the textbook. So what they said was, wait a second, how can this be? You guys aren't showing anything that has to do with American exceptionalism. You've let that out. We've got some revisionist history going on in here. We are not showing that we do come from a traditional, our traditional Judeo-Christian type history and background. Of course, I'm not sure how much of that is pushed in the other. We know for sure that origins, and when it comes to origins, is for sure not going to be presented in Seago. Then you have some of that left over with Common Core, which is still left over from the Bush days. And you combine all that, and the parents, some parents, but there's only about 800. There's 800 schools apparently in the state of Texas that are on it and are using it, and it's now been revised some. But the residual effects of it are still there. And in my judgment, I think it needs to go away. There needs to be a clear connection between the textbook. Here's another thing. It is not approved by the school board.
Yeah, there's another problem. I personally have a problem with these education centers. That accounts for the 1-to-1 ratio in the public schools now.
Yeah.
And Cecil Bell is in favor of that. He likes those teachers and schools to have that research educational center, but I'm in disagreement with that. I don't think they need to have 13. But, and what do they do? Well, they developed Seago. Now, they use taxpayer dollars to develop that program, and what did they do is they turned around and sold it to the taxpayer at the schools. Those schools paid a high price for the, so we were taxed twice. Why didn't they go out to a private group to purchase and then have it go through the school board? Why do we have to pay tax dollars for them to have their educational centers and hire more people to develop curriculum at our expense?
Let's take that one step farther. Why are they developing online curriculum that is distinct from what we're teaching our kids? Here's why, because the school board approves this over here, and we're a conservative state, and we got some pretty conservative stuff coming out of these textbooks. But there is another group of people, whatever they are, whatever their ideology is, all I know is they lead out some of the stuff that is important to you and I as Texans. How do they get the right to perpetrate that upon our kids? And then as parents, it's like pulling teeth to be able to get in there and see what's going on. It's caused, as you know, it's caused a huge issue. That's a great question. And then we end up paying for it. You're right, twice.
Right. You pay for the educational center, you pay for the staff that put it together, that they hired to put it together, and then they sell it,
Right.
and it's expensive. So you're paying for that school, they had to purchase it twice. You know?
People listen, do you know why this is all taking place? All of this stuff. All of us here, we've worked all our lives. We go to work, we come home at night, we raise our kids, we save our money. We've been faithful in saving our money and educating our children. And we come home at night, we got all this stuff going on, we've been working, and we're tired, and we're lethargic, and we say, oh man, can you believe they passed that? Oh. All the way to Roe versus Wade, it's cost us almost 60 million children. Oh, we just sat back. How could that happen? And I'm as guilty as anybody else. I remember thinking one time, well, I can't change it. That's job security. Shame on me. Shame on us. Life begins at conception. We roll over and play dead, and it's just going to happen. We figure it's the law. It's the law. It's the law. This is why this happens. We just let stuff just go on. People, God has called us to something greater than that. It's time. If we don't do, I think there is one last shot at this deal for our country. There's just possibly one last shot that if we open up our hands and turn our faces to God, say, forgive us. God just might, He just might bring another great awakening and turn the course of this deal. Let me tell you, I've been teaching in my class on Sunday morning about Jonah, and I discovered something this week. When Jonah finally got out of the whale, they went to pronounce judgment on Nineveh. He went to them. He says, man, you guys repent or you're going to die. Boom. All the people from the smallest to the greatest repented. But you know who the holdout was? The king. Everybody did what him. Everybody. But you know what happened? He heard the message and he saw the people. And he said, I'm in. He declares a fast, sackcloth and ashes. And I thought, as I taught that, I thought, oh my goodness, that is the power of the people influencing leaders to do the right thing. But if they just say, man, we don't believe Jonah, let's just keep watching TV. The king would be dead now with the rest of them.
If
Yes.
Joe Strauss runs for speaker again, would you vote for him?
Joe Strauss question.
The old Joe Strauss question. I have to be honest with you. I don't know Joe Strauss. I know of Joe Strauss. I know what my conservative friends tell me about Joe Strauss. I believe that a man has to see and do and watch what takes place and meet people and find out what's going on. But the other side of that is, my position is I want the most conservative, fiscally conservative, constitutionally conservative person in that position. I want a person who's pro-life. I want a person who's pro-Second Amendment. I want a person who is pro-First Amendment. I want one that is traditional family. I want one who wants to make sure that men are with men and women are with women. I know that might be offensive to some, but that is a major issue because it is at the level of the family that nationalism is destroyed. No family, we lose nationalism, we lose nationalism, we lose our language, we lose our borders, and we lose our culture, and we become nothing. And if Mr. Strauss does not hold to those positions, I'm out. And I'll vote for somebody who will.
Amen.
But honestly, I don't know. All I know is what I've been told. But I'll get a chance to see if you'll send me. But you can count on this. We're going to have a conservative. From my vote, anyway.
It's not necessarily what you've been told, because you can go back and see what he's done. It's all
Yeah,
right
right.
there in black and white, right there for everyone to see.
If you're asking me to make a commitment to vote against him right now, I cannot
No,
do that.
But I'm saying, yeah, I mean,
But please don't
just go and
misunderstand.
see.
Please don't misunderstand. I want the right guy, and I'm a conservative. If he's not a conservative, if between now and the next time you and I see each other and you go, have you read that? Well, yeah, I have. How do you feel? He's out.
But you will seek advice from Steve Toth.
Of course. Trust me, I've already got Steve's advice on that after the last deal. But if you remember in the last forum, if you recall, I can't make a judgment on that. I don't know. I don't know the man. Hey, wait a second. He was close to Eisler, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Well, Ice was close to him.
Right.
Whatever, but they were close. And then I'm over here and I said, hey, I don't like the fact that I've been told that here this person is going to blackball mature, tenured statesmen because they didn't vote for him. I'm out on that. I don't like that. I've heard that that takes place. I don't think it's right that they determine who's going to be in what position based upon how they vote at the very beginning. I'm out on that. I don't like the fact that 30-plus conservatives voted against his last budget. See, these kinds of things. So when I look at that, as much as I would love to say, oh yeah, man, I'm against that, I'm going to vote him out, I'm going to do whatever. If y'all be patient, let me take a little higher look at this deal, but know that I want the most conservative guy that we can have in there. And I don't think that's too much to ask.
Will you support a secret vote for Speaker?
Absolutely.
That's the way it should be.
Amen.
Are you kidding? And when you really think about it, can you believe that? And then people, quality, good people, who have something to share, who have something to give, they can't even get it on the calendar. Yes.
On a side note about Lynette's comment about Joe Strauss, he does have an opponent.
Yay.
Yep, my baby again.
Now, he's got to register, and he's got to go with Texas Ethics Commission and everything else before he can run. So I'm assuming he's going to do all that.
It's already done. He's filed.
There you go. Walter, be gentle.
Yeah.
So you may not have to worry about-
take you on today. It's Christmas time.
Yeah, that's it.
But I'm looking forward to the debates between you and Bruce Tough because you're taking him on his voting at the township. But I just want to tell you, what a pleasant spiritual experience at your church yesterday. I just thank y'all so much. And I'll tell you what, you are a dadgum good preacher, and you really laid, and now Jonah, man, that comparison you brought in, and I'm telling you, I was almost ready to convert to become a Republican.
I
did want to give you an opportunity to respond to this because during your sermon, you did say the church is backing me. This is a church effort. What's your position on merging the church with politics in this detailed, in this intricate fashion? What do you think about it?
Okay, let me tell you where we do not merge these two first. And then I'll answer the question. We do not merge them when it comes to any of the finances. So there's no crossover of money. If you give money to the church, it's either money that you give in your tithes and offerings to the church, or it's something that you give and to the campaign. And I happen to have a campaign boss who is watching over the finances on this deal, who has spent his life investigating political fraud. So he has been very careful to tell us what we can do and what we can't do. We've also looked into what we can do in terms of people and facilities. We can use people and facilities. They have that right. Now, what do I think about the commingling of church and state? Here's what I believe, that there is no bifurcation between the sacred and the secular. I do not believe that this is the world of our sacred that we do during Sunday. Saturday night, Sunday morning, we use our spiritual language, we meet with our spiritual friends, we do our Sunday morning thing, we dress for our Sunday deal. And then Monday through Saturday, we go over here and we do our secular thing and our secular work and our secular friends and our secular entertainment. That is a Kantian idea, Hegel, if you will, where you have the division of the phenomenal and the noumenal, which now it comes into this realm, which comes into the realm of a division of the spiritual and the non-spiritual, the sacred and the secular, and I don't see it that way. Because the Scripture tells me, and this is kind of how I'm motivated, and please believe me, I am not a spiritual giant. Any of you who know me know I got as many issues as everybody else here, and I'm really trying to live for the Lord. But the deal is that we know that as a Christian, everything we do, we're due all to the glory of God. And it wasn't until the early 50s that somebody came up with this idea that if you decide that you want to speak about political issues, you can't do that anymore if you're a 501c3. Who in the world would come up with something like that? Only somebody who was trying to hide something, who put it on a bill that wasn't even the bill that they were passing. It was like pork. And they stuck it on there, and the next thing you know, the entire church has absolutely shut up. Let me tell you, this is very near and dear to me, because in me doing this has cost me one or two very, very, very intimate and close relationships, where I've had to say, this is what I believe God wants me to do, and I'm going to do it. And our church sees this as an extension, just like it's a ministry.
Yeah.
That's how we see it. We see it the same way as we see a ministry. As a matter of fact, it's a campaign, it's a political campaign, but we look at it as a kingdom campaign. You know, look, if almost 30 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Christian leaders, many of those guys were pastors. We even had presidents who were pastors. I mean, this is not something that is new, but it has become new to us because of the secularization of the culture. And if you don't think that that is a problem, in the last vote, we got trumped as believers because of the secular culture. We would not even get up and go vote. 25% of evangelicals, that's people who say, we read our Bible, pray, and go to church. 25% voted.
What is saying?
Doesn't it bother you? Man, it just breaks your heart. So what's the answer?
You're not going to go vote?
Churches, yeah. But the churches need to wake up to this. We need to get into the churches. We need to talk to the preachers. And listen, I'm preaching on Sunday morning. I can't go preach in those churches. So what you need to do is talk to your pastor. Say, Pastor, why can't we register voters here? Well, that's not separation of church and state. Wait a second. Where does it say I can't register voters? We'll lose our tax-exempt status.
No, that's
No, you
not
won't.
true. The only thing is the endorsement of candidates. They register voters at churches all the time, so
Walter,
it's just the
do you know?
endorsement
But
of
do you know?
candidates. That's what the problem was, is your church is endorsing you.
No.
But
Linda,
look,
do you know who said, listen, really, do you know who said that they can't endorse candidates? Do you know who said that?
Lyndon Johnson.
Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so Lyndon says we can't. The Constitution says I can. It's called the First Amendment. And last year, 1,000 churches sent a video with an endorsement to the IRS, and not one has been challenged. And there'll be more this year. You know, let me tell you something. I have a fundamental right, and it's not just a right, it is the law of the land. That if I want to stand up on Sunday morning and I want to push a particular person, I can, but I don't.
No, that's freedom of speech, it's not freedom of religion. That's
Well,
what
for
we're
freedom of
saying.
speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Sorry, freedom of speech. I have the right to stand up and say about a particular person. I don't, but you know how I handle it? I say, okay, this candidate believes life does not begin at conception. He's pro-choice. This guy does not believe that what you own ultimately is yours, and that if he chooses to redistribute what you have to those who are less fortunate, he can. Hey, go down a list of these. Now here's a guy over here who believes in pro-life. This guy believes in the Second Amendment that you can protect what is yours. He believes that the Bible says, do not steal. That means take what I have earned and give it to somebody less fortunate. It's called stealing. It's in the Ten Commandments. Now, this guy believes this guy believes this, and this is exactly what I do. Ask the people in my church. What does the Bible say? Look at this verse. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and my soul knows right well. Your eyes saw my substance, yet being unperfect, and in your book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. Pro-life. That's the Bible. This guy says no, this guy says this. Just on that one issue. Is that important enough for you to vote? Let's say it's not. I said, well, I got to have at least 3. The Bible says thou shalt not steal.
Now, are you gonna call taxes theft?
No, but here's the deal. See, when we roll over on this stuff, the next thing is they're going to go into our 401ks. And
Oh, you better believe it.
you can count on it.
Give
That's
us
why
wonderful treasury bonds.
years ago, when the educational deal, when the homeschoolers were in Austin and they were protesting, I was headmaster of a Christian school in Humboldt. And my concern was that if I don't go and march with the homeschoolers, who's the next person?
Yeah.
Who's the next group? Private Christian schools.
Right.
We went over and it got quashed. It was awesome. And that's how it is with these taxes, and then your 401k, and whatever, da-da-da, and it goes on and on. We could go on here a long time. Anyway, if I can just say this one last thing, and we'll talk difference. I promise you, I commit to you, if you will vote for me, and you will tell your friends to vote for me, and you will jump on Facebook and go and like me on Facebook and get all your friends to like me, and we can outrun this other guy, good guy, but we can outrun him, I promise you. I will do a job for you that you have never seen before. This is what I do. I love this. I love this state. I love my family. And you know what? Now I love all of you.
Now, those of you that are candidates, if you want to come and speak, all you have to do